Like,
Okay, 7 o'clock. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
yeah,
Okay, roll call.
Okay, Larry,
yes.
Hilbert,
Yes.
LaFever,
Yes.
Foley,
Yes.
Rich, yes, Woodruff,
Yes.
and Nat is.
That's
on the
online.
phone.
Online.
Okay,
I'm here.
Okay, public participation rules. I don't think we're going to worry about that. Approval of minutes, July 12th, 2021.
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Larry, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment. So we only have Matt and Don Gilman. Don, do you have anything for us or?
No, I do not. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, Quentin Meek, is that Sterling Group?
All right. Can you hear me? I'm going to take this off. I like to wander a little bit when I talk. So I think you all have the handout. My name's Quentin. I know a couple of you, but locally I work at Lappin Agency. More broadly, I lead our cannabis practice at Sterling Insurance Group. And so I was talking with Nathan, and he had mentioned that this is kind of a topic that the township is exploring. And so he asked me to come in and kind of give perspective from the risk management and insurance side of the business. I've been involved for about 4 years. So since 2017, when medical licensing went live, I've been participating in the industry from an insurance perspective. And so had the opportunity to see it grow quite a bit over the past 4.5 years. And thought I'd kind of share everything from that insurance side. We get to see quite a bit, and hopefully it can be helpful to you as you kind of evaluate whether or not this is an opportunity for the township. So if you want to, I think you're just going to lead the slides. All right. A little thumbs up. All right. What I want to talk through first is we'll start with like fast facts and kind of an overview of what the industry in Michigan looks like as a whole, and then drill down into the local market. You've probably done some of this research, so I'll go quickly through it. But rather than just jump into insurance right away, I think it's always a good starting point to revisit where we're at in the industry. If I talk to you a month from now, 2 months from now, the statistics will probably change. It's growing and changing very quickly. So I like to start there. And then we'll dive into requirements from an insurance perspective at the state level. And I'll give you an example of some insurance requirements at the municipal level, all here in Michigan. And then I'll put the insurance spin on it in terms of what we see from the insurance industry in these operations. I think when you're evaluating cannabis in your community, one of the concerns is, how safe is it? What are the safeguards around these businesses? And rightly so. We're kind of at the forefront of seeing that. And I think it's a pretty interesting thing to see it from the insurance side and see it from that, not just regulatory side, but everything that's expected of these businesses before they even have the opportunity to enter a community. And so we'll talk through that and then some additional considerations and ask questions. We can kind of go off script, make it yours. So some quick facts. As of June 2021, I'd say like the end of June, there was a study published valuing Michigan's cannabis market at 3.2 billion right now. So it's just an absolutely enormous market here in Michigan, particularly enormous because, as you probably know, we don't really have a cap on licenses. So it's kind of just an open market. We're second or third, I think, in the country with our market size, because businesses are free to come and really maximize what the state has to offer. Of that 3.2 billion, however, the regulated market generated just shy of $1 billion. So we're looking at the regulated market only having about a third of that market share. We'll get back to that in a minute. But of that regulated market, we saw about 169 million in 2020 of tax and fee revenue generated. That's money going to the state, and that's money going back into municipalities as well. Some of the intent behind tax and fee is just to cover the law enforcement and the additional enforcement at the local level of these businesses. But I think as you can see, and as I think 2021 is going to show us, it's now far surpassed that in doing the additional advantage of pumping money back into municipalities for a number of different utilizations. So I think it's really positive news. As of March 2021, we saw about 18,000 legal cannabis jobs created in Michigan. Half of those were created in 2020. We are trending to probably double that again, I'd say. And so, I mean, ton of opportunity from an employment perspective. And these are businesses that aren't just employing like a low wage type of position. You're talking bud tenders, which is like a bartender. Get ready for the puns too. They're all over the place. But these are bud tenders making a very competitive hourly wage. But in most cases, I'd say our clients are providing employee benefits now too. So these are highly sophisticated operations that are really providing a nice place of employment for individuals in the community. Across the state right now, we're looking at 400 licensed medical provisioning centers and 300 licensed adult use retail stores, so recreational. Pretty big footprint here in Michigan so far. And then lastly, and one thing I like to bring up is right now, it would look like 70% of the transactions taking place occur outside of retail stores, basically the illicit market. And I say that because 3.2 billion, 70% of that occurring in the illicit market, it's happening whether or not municipalities are allowing it to happen. And so I think the nice thing is when a municipality does buy in and allows these businesses to come in and sell on the retail side, you do have the additional benefit of this product being tested for heavy metals, tested for mold. And so the product going back into the consumer base is tested product. It's safe, it's healthy to consume, whatever the view may be on that, but it's actually a regulated product. And so I like to mention that one because I think I think we all know this. I mean, it's happening, right? People are using the product in our communities. If we can regulate it and benefit more from it, I think all the better. So the local market here in Michigan, I just wanted to show this little footprint map. On the left side, it's really hard to read, but it's just to show all those dots are the various type of licensees here in Michigan. So as you probably know, the 5 main types of licensees are secure transportation, testing facilities, provisioning centers, which is the retail side, cultivation and processing. That entire footprint is shown on the left-hand side. There's quite a bit, and you'll see some concentrated areas, especially in like Southeast, Southwest Michigan, a little bit over in the Traverse City area and a little bit in the middle of the state. On the right-hand side, that's a zoomed in picture of Northeast Michigan. And I mainly did that just to show, I think, the opportunity that still exists in this area. We'd probably be having a different conversation if I was talking to a municipality in Southwest Michigan at this point. Opportunities there, but it's pretty saturated. As you can see here in this map, there's a ton of opportunity. Neighbors to the south in Harrisville, I know have allowed it at this point. I know there's some operations up in Rogers City, but largely there's just a ton of opportunity here still. And I think there's a lot of businesses that would take advantage of it. So that's kind of the overview. But from an insurance perspective, specifically, I wanted to start on the regulatory side, just to kind of show what these businesses have to bring to the table from an insurance perspective. So starting at the state level, whether it's medical or rec, financial responsibility requirements that these businesses have to procure. And part of that financial responsibility is insurance. And so I'm not going to read verbatim here, but the bottom line is there are basically 2 types of coverages that are required of these businesses: general liability and product liability. Now, the state outlines it as $100,000 of each. On the general liability side, it's almost always $1 million, $2 million. So $1 million occurrence limit, $2 million aggregate. It's a little bit of gibberish, but if you have a small business, or I mean, obviously the township has an insurance policy, you know that it's pretty standard. And so most businesses are above and beyond on the general liability side. There was a time where we saw businesses buying products that met just that $100,000 product liability limit. I'd say at this point, we've surpassed that. Most businesses are carrying $1 million limit or more, because most businesses have more than one license and more than one location, and it certainly warrants it. So I just say that to know it's not usually that they're carrying minimum limits. These businesses are going above and beyond what's required at the state level, at this point. The other thing that's required at the state level is if you have secure transporters that you allow in your community, they have to show proof of auto insurance. And most of these businesses, if they're providing delivery services from the retail side, are carrying liability on those drivers as well. So it's a well-insured market, and the products exist. There was a time where it was hard to find cannabis insurance. You can find insurance for your cannabis business now. So it's well developed. So one other thing I'll share with you, hot off the presses, as of July 13th, I want to say, there's House Bill 4516. And so this has been passed. The governor has approved it. I think we're looking at an October effective date. So it's very new. The Marijuana Regulatory Agency will often take these acts and then issue administrative rules. And that's kind of what we look to as guidance in the industry. That hasn't even happened yet here. I know for certain that insurance products don't even exist to cover what this bill outlines, but I wanted to bring it to your attention as you explore this in your community, because you will see this as kind of part of the businesses that are coming into your community. Essentially what it's outlining is, it's like an intoxication bill, we're kind of calling it, or a dram shop type of law, where basically it's outlining the non-sale to minors or intoxicated individuals. And if you do, this is to help provide coverage or, liability transfer in the event that individual injures or gets injured. And so it's an interesting law because most of the operators in this space are not consumption lounges. And so they're selling a product that's going off site, but it doesn't really matter. This exists now, and it's for all of those that are transferring or selling cannabis. So as it stands now, that would be your cultivators, it would be your processors, even though their product is only sold to the end consumer via retail, but it also obviously affects retail. So this is a pretty big deal from a industry perspective. So I do think you're going to encounter it. I just wanted to kind of bring it up. And I think it also shows that, if we would have talked 3 months ago, I wouldn't have even brought this up because it really hadn't come to fruition yet. And so it just shows how fast this industry moves and how, it's consistently working towards becoming more and more regulated and trying to, promulgate itself as more of a standard industry. So I want to give you a municipal example as well. As you consider this in your community, I think it's helpful to look at what other communities have done. I chose City of Lansing because I think City of Lansing is a good example of some of the things that you can put into place that go above and beyond the state, and maybe some things that don't necessarily make sense for every community. I don't know if you know this yet, but you can go above and beyond what the state's requiring. So it's within reason, and it's not for everything, but on the insurance side, you can require basically as much as you want. You just can't go below what the state's requiring. And so that's what the City of Lansing has done. Basically, the City of Lansing is requesting that you have $1 million, $2 million general liability policy instead of the $100,000 policy outlined by the state. Like we talked about, most businesses are doing that anyway. But I think as a municipality, what I pay particular attention to is the beginning of this, and that the policies need to name the city, elected and appointed officials, employees, so on and so forth. That's pretty standard wording now. I'd say for most of our clients, we're issuing certificates of insurance showing this, along with 30 days notice of cancellation on these insurance policies. From my perspective, I highly recommend this. I think that this makes a lot of sense as a municipality. It helps keep oversight and understanding that your businesses and your community are carrying the appropriate insurance. So I like to use this as an example because I think it's a good example of what to do. If you want to move to the next slide. The City of Lansing also requires a bond in addition to what the state's requiring. I don't know that this one's necessary, but I wanted to show just kind of a view of what the city's doing, because it certainly could be required in this community as well. I think that the bond is just kind of another step to get into a community in an industry that, businesses are already doing quite a bit to get licensed. But I wanted to show that it does exist. And the City of Lansing, to be fair, offers kind of two ways to satisfy this requirement. It's a bond or an escrow. creation of an escrow account, which most businesses in this industry have no problem doing. So just kind of some flavor as to which directions you can take this. I think I'd say maybe, I don't even know if I could put a percentage on it. 30–40% of the municipalities that we work with our clients have requirements that kind of step outside of what the state does. But I think the thing to contemplate is just making sure it's not a barrier to entry. You know, you want as many businesses to try to come to this community as possible, in my opinion. Next slide. So we talked about, you know, the actual regulatory and statutory requirements, but I think it just as an additional layer of understanding from our side of the industry and what we're seeing, I wanted to share with you what insurance companies are expecting or requiring of these businesses to insure them, because I think it helps show the sophistication of these businesses. From a risk perspective, I almost would rather insure these businesses than you name me another business, you name me a manufacturing facility, because these are either newly built buildings or they're newly renovated buildings. And from a security perspective, you probably got just as good of a chance of trying to rob a bank as you do one of these facilities, guarantee you. We walk and we visit all of our clients' facilities. I mean, I wouldn't dare try. So what I'm talking about is, you know, from a property perspective, to even be insurable, not only do you need to have central station alarms, but additional security like additional tech cameras, automated systems. Many have guards on site, armed and unarmed, just as deterrents. The vault and safe requirements are absolutely incredible. Safes typically have to be 800 pounds or more. And most of these safes are in vault rooms that are impenetrable, but at the end of the day, if you are going to allow processing centers, oil extraction methods are scrutinized pretty heavily. So you don't have kind of a fly by night operation that's extracting the cannabis oil with, you know, butane without some type of system built around it. These are typically well-built systems that do not lead to explosion. In fact, there's really not a whole lot of case law on claims related to explosion from a sophisticated operator. So we don't see a ton of that either. Another one I'll mention is cultivation light bulbs. I mean, that's how granular these insurance companies have gotten, and they're doing inspections. So this isn't just kind of put it down on an application and get insured. They're sending inspectors on site, and they will recommend basically immediate recommendations where, should they not implement something that they don't have, they will then be non-insured, which, you know, kind of pushes everybody to do it pretty quickly. From a liability perspective, there's product testing required to get product liability. In most cases, the state requires it as well. Lockout, tagout procedures and theft compliance procedures. I mean, these are extremely sophisticated business when it comes to like a standard operating procedure perspective. I think you could pick a party store, and then you pick a retail provisioning center in the cannabis industry. And the amount of documentation they have around employees and what to do in a robbery type situation is just incredible. They know not to resist. They know to give up product. That's assuming a theft could even occur. I mean, in most cases, with the lockout tagout procedures, a criminal is not going to really have any access point. So if you want to move to the next slide, from an auto perspective, these aren't cars driving around carrying cannabis, advertising with a marijuana leaf on it. These are typically unmarked vehicles. They don't want to be seen. They're typically carrying quite a bit of cash and high value product. Most vehicles have lock boxes. MVRs are run on drivers. So we're doing background checks on drivers. I mean, these are, this isn't kind of the stereotypical kind of Scooby and Shaggy driving around the mystery mobile. Workers' compensation. I think one thing that the cannabis industry does a really good job at is just employee wellness in general. And so the safety of their employees is top of mind. They're following OSHA standards. When you visit these facilities, I mean, they have chemicals labeled if chemicals are on site. They have ventilation systems in place. They have ventilators for employees going in. Trim rooms can become pretty humid, and quite honestly, I mean, can create kind of an allergen type of environment. But these operators are using ventilators and things like that. So, I mean, highly sophisticated. And then the other thing I'll note is that we just haven't seen a ton of claims in this industry. I think some of it's lack of reporting. This is a risk tolerant industry. So they buy insurance to be able to transfer risk as needed, but it's it's a highly capitalized industry. And so they're able to absorb some risk and not report it and maybe pay a claim out of pocket and that type of thing. But even still, we just haven't seen a ton of claim activity. And across the country, there's very little case law as it relates to like a product liability claim. So a situation of somebody smoking something from a retail center, eating an edible, and having some type of serious medical episode. We just haven't seen that yet. Doesn't mean we won't. But I think it is interesting. We're 4 years in the Michigan's market, and we just haven't seen anything like that. We've had 2 state-initiated recalls, and they were from the same operator, and that operator is no longer in business. Their license was revoked. The state has been, I think, a really good partner in this industry so far. And I just say all of that to say, from our perspective, as hard as it is sometimes to get these businesses insured because of the federal status of cannabis still, I mean, they are some of the more sophisticated businesses that we work with across the board. So if you want to flip to the last slide, just additional considerations that I'll leave you with. I mentioned all these things from a regulatory perspective and insurance perspective. There's a ton more that I think you'll probably uncover in all the research that you do and as you have discussions with other presenters. But things that I'll highlight is that these businesses, to even have the ability to come to your community to try to get licensed in your community, are undergoing criminal and financial background investigations. Most are subject to pre-licensure inspections. So all of that to say, before they're open, you're probably looking at least at 1 pre-licensure inspection. Potentially inspections by Bureau of Fire Safety, local law enforcement, inspections by us. And you're talking 3-4 inspections before the business's doors are even open. So you can rest assured, I think, in your community that when the doors do open, everything's been thought of. And I mean, they've been scrutinized to the highest degree. And then testing standards are pretty advanced at this point. I mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but the product that's leaving these retail centers has been tested for mold. It's been tested for heavy metals. Vitamin E that we had in the vape cartridges a couple of years ago, that's gone. I mean, we're talking about products that, while they might be more potent than the unregulated market, they are safe and healthy to consume as far as we can tell. And it's something that's consistently evolving. I want to say probably as recently as this year, I think testing standards have changed. So as soon as something is found to be potentially negative or unhealthy, testing standards are changed to adapt to it. So I leave you with this just to show that, these businesses coming into a community from our perspective kind of pass the risk management test, so to speak. I mean, these are very insurable businesses and therefore, relatively safe from a community perspective, at least from our insurance point of view. So any questions? I mean, that's all I have.
So what does an insurance policy cost for an average store that opens up, say that the township would have to be aware of?
Yeah, I think from a premium perspective, you're probably looking at anywhere from 30,000 to 65,000 is what one of these stores pays per retail location.
So for our insurance part of it, of having this business in our township, is there anything we have to pay as a township?
No, not from an insurance perspective. Nope. I would just have in your municipal ordinance, I would have that requirement that they name the city township officials board as additional insured.
I have 2 questions. One, what's your cancel rate
On these policies? Well, it's super low because the minute they cancel like liability coverage or something to that end, they're out of compliance with the state. They could be shut down, their license could be revoked. But B, at this point, the operators are sophisticated enough that this is probably on the smaller end of the costs they incur as a business being open. If you look at the capitalization requirements and the CPA attested financials that they have to present, we're talking about very well capitalized businesses coming into your community. And you can take that a number of ways too. As a municipality, you can have a scoring system. There's pros and cons of that. The pros are that you can pretty much bring a business that's well established already and they're just opening another location. There's some cons there too. I think the risk management side of me gets a little worried because it's ripe with lawsuits. Quite honestly, you're going to have winners, and you're going to have losers, and lawsuits are just a part of that process. It's just part of the kind of competitive piece of it.
Who's gonna have lawsuits?
hmm.
We would have the lawsuits?
Yes, yes.
So that's an
You,
expense.
well, it's usually ironed out quickly. I just mean, I think it's more of a, you're pushing off the ability to open these shops and to, kind of start gaining the tax and the fee revenue. There are municipalities that I think have done it successfully, but it's just a part of the process. So I mention it because, I mean, you can look across the state.
Well,
quite a few
Traverse
of that.
City is having a problem with it because they're being really strict about how those people build their buildings, what they have to offer the buildings.
Exactly.
And that's a whole nother level of why they're getting sued because
Yeah, if you
because
can,
some people are doing what they say because they've got lots of money, and then the other people that can't quite come to that level of what they want, which is a dream thing, are feeling put out by it and they can't compete. Is that right?
yeah, no, absolutely. I think if, the less oversight in some ways, they meet the municipal ordinance, have at it.
And if I could actually interject, that's why there's actually, I think that site-specific reason is the capitalization aspect has really pushed a lot of the mom and pops out of a market that those mom and pops were really the ones that started the market. And so what the state did as hopefully a corrective measure to the capitalization aspect, even though it still needs the same excruciating clarity that the state goes through, but is the sixth license, the micro business license. Because then that affords, and there's examples, pros and cons across. We could look at the potential suit that the city looked at because of the way that they had a scoring mechanism. There's a lot of lessons. I think that's where maybe Quentin was going is not any community at this point in time has to recreate the wheel. And that's where Denise's emails of all the other examples and those discussions to really take and learn the lessons of other municipalities, whether they jumped in early in the game before the state really had things laid out appropriately. I think that's why we did as a municipality, is that there was absolutely zero clarity to the recreational bill. It had no similarity, very little similarity to the medical. So they're two different formats, and the state's still trying to wallow through it. In my field trip to the Med Cafe, when I actually sat down with the owner, and that was what still sticks with me, is how many things that they had to do, even unlock that front door. It's just like, oh, my delivery guy's gonna be like 4 minutes late, got held up at this light. You can click on the moving little bar, and the state's covering everything. It was like, holy dudes, that was, so there are pros and cons, as Quentin was saying, but it's in this process, these are the lessons that Denise has already learned with a lot of other communities.
Well, I was wondering, like, from the federal standpoint, what is your thoughts? Like, that's still illegal. So I'm wondering how that affects things. And then would it be to with insurance, should we carry some kind of insurance in case we get sued?
No,
Do we do that or?
Yeah, so from a municipal perspective, I mean, being listed as additional insured is the best way to counter that. I mean,
Okay.
you're going to have the risk transfer there. And if there's some error or omission that came up, full disclosure, we work with Alpena Township, your policy would respond to that. So I'll put that hat on real quick. So, I mean, there's coverage either way. You don't need something specific as
Okay.
municipality. And from the federal level, we're probably a ways out. We really are. We're probably a couple of years out.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Is there-
What's expected to happen is banking will come along first. And it'll take a while for the federal government, and it will ultimately probably come back to the state anyway. So, at this point, it's going to be a couple of years from everything we've heard and we can see. Real quick, did you?
Yeah,
have
my
one more
second question is, I mean, it's kind of self-serving too, but how are people paying for it? Because from the federal level, they can't write you a check. So
Yeah.
how is it being, how are these, is this a cash business?
It's not a cash
Okay.
business at this point, no.
There are
Um,
certain institutions that are banking this. so
Locally,
that's-
yeah, you have a couple of credit unions in Michigan. Bank Michigan out of Ann Arbor is one of the newer banks to get involved. Dart Bank allows it.
Frankenmuth
Union
is
Bank,
starting,
they
it's
just-
getting there. Yeah.
Exactly. So it exists. It's still largely cash. I mean, you're paying with cash in most cases in the provisioning centers,
Yes.
but our clients are not bringing us a
A bag of
they're-
cash.
yeah.
I guess that was
Yeah.
my concern. Like I'm
No.
looking from a, maybe not even from a municipality standpoint, not at all, but I'm worried more about the cash liability and is that covered within this?
Yeah, so a lot of the sophisticated operations have, their safe deposit box or what have you, just like a bank. The cash is going in, not a single employee has access to that cash. Once it's in, and it's been picked up once or twice a day. So there's not even a lot of cash on hand. Others, it's just in a safe deposit box that's inaccessible. Yeah.
So roughly, what's a premium cost for, say like this township gets involved in this?
Well, no, there's no premium cost to the township, just the operators that choose to operate.
And that's that 30
They
to
put it on
65.
the operator, like he has to get the money.
Yeah, you don't
Like
have any
he gets
insurance
to-
costs.
Okay.
I thought, yeah, earlier to your question, that's usually what like a retail center would be paying.
So is that why you're saying the person should have 1 million to 2 million? Is that for other reasons? that you're saying
No,
that?
it's just good business practice to carry. I mean, it's like any other business on the planet would be carrying like 1 million, 2 million general liability policy. And so when the state came out with those requirements, it was kind of one of those, all right, well, that's good, but as a business, I mean,
Yeah, because currently I think we're already at as a municipality.
I think you're at like 1 million, 3 million or higher than that. Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
So and then we actually, in terms of utilization of subcontractors through DPW, for example, we maintain annual renewal processes as an additional insured and have to have documentation that they have $1 million liability before they even put a piece of equipment on a dig site. So,
And the same thing would happen here if you followed something like this. Each renewal, you're from the operators in your community, you're going to receive an updated certificate of insurance. And to address your other question, if they were to go into cancellation status,
Yeah.
it's gonna be triggered immediately. You're going to get a notice that their policy is in cancellation. We've dealt with that a few times, just missed payments or cross communication lines, and it's always a bear because it's panic.
And that's
Um,
I guess that's my point. I want to get driven across is these people aren't not paying their bills.
Mm-mm. Never once had an issue with it.
But even the state would, if they didn't pay, well, say they got $1 million, maybe say just stop it. The state's saying they have to have it. So the
Mhm.
state would cancel.
Absolutely. the State would
Okay,
investigate.
The state's not just going to cancel their insurance, they're going to shut. their
You shut the
doors.
whole thing down.
So
for
so
not having that.
and they can inspect whenever they want. So when the MRA goes in to inspect, a lot of times it's a surprise visit, not all the time, but when they go in, they do have to show attestations showing that they've attested to these financial responsibility requirements. They have to show the enforced policy. We get requests like that all the time. Hey, MRA is here. I don't have it sitting out. Can you send it to me? So it's not just at renewal time that this is getting addressed. It's probably 1 to 2 times throughout the policy period, at least by the state. And you could stop at any time too. So. Yeah.
Well, that, I stopped at the Roger City one too, and they said they're in a system where their product and everything is being followed, and the state
okay.
inspector can also get on that same
Yeah.
website, so they also know where everything is, so it's not like.
Every single transaction has to be accounted for at the state level. So yeah, to your point, literally every time it moves, it's tracked. There's no injection of illegal product, and it's certainly not leaving that store without being paid for and tracked by the state that it has left the store. Everything purchased has a barcode on it, so you can kind of eradicate some illicit behavior from that. I mean, it's probably going to be the most tracked purchase you'll ever make.
I mean, they get it so granular that recreational and medical can be on complete opposite sides of the building
Mhm.
because those do not cross streams.
Yeah.
And that was the thing with Roger City is they actually had to put in a second when they went to, because they started with medical and then expanded their business into the recreational realm. And they actually had to lose a whole room because that had to now be the second vault. And it was like, you had to swipe to get through one doorway into a closet, to swipe to vaults A or B. And if you weren't on that shift, you couldn't get past it. That was the biggest thing. I was like, holy dude, the state for a positive change is dotting every I and crossing every T.
It's micromanaged to its highest.
It
of hills.
certainly is. Yeah.
And there's even limits on who can be in the room, depending on what you're there for. So like
Well,
medical can be, there can be whatever the capacity is, but you have to wait if you're recreational till the medical people are done. And like, it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it is, I had a conversation with the manager at one of them in Tawas. And I mean, just the stuff he was telling me, I thought, I work for a financial institution. I've been in banks and credit unions for 20 years. Our job isn't that hard. And those people aren't making enough money to have to put up with that. That just the amount of detail that, you know, it's crazy. Even what they can tell you about the product is limited.
Yeah, they're knowledgeable professionals. It's pretty incredible. I mean, they will make the consumer feel educated. So if it's rec that you allow in this community, I think you'll be impressed with what they can share about it. It's not just trying to push product. These are usually passionate individuals, which I find to be an added benefit.
Well, you can get a degree in it up in.
Yeah.
Like state,
Yeah, get degrees now as well.
next year.
Yeah.
That will be the end of the 4-year program.
They'll probably force these people all to have a degree.
So in that, with the sixth licensure of the micro business, have you had any experience?
Yeah, we've had conversations with some. It's kind of similar. They're highly regulated as well. To your point, it is allowing some accessibility for someone who can't meet the capitalization requirements to get cultivation, processing, and all of it separately. I think it's, usually you get highly passionate individuals that are going after a micro business because that is what it's almost like a brewery. It's exactly what it is at the end of the day. And there aren't many of them right now. So, I mean, I think that you get some interest from that side of it. The bigger footprint will come from your cultivation and your processing facilities, if that was something that you chose to allow. The positive thing from that end is usually, they procure a big retail site or real estate site, and they help clean up some blight here and there. I mean, there's some substantial benefit from allowing some of the bigger operators in the community as well, just not retail, but kind of the whole supply chain if you can.
I've noticed that too, that in these communities, a lot of them are taking up like a bank or something that went up and they're revamping it into this nice looking business, really. It's not like a dilapidated.
One
old
of them in
building.
Tawas, not
Yeah.
the one that I went to, it was my old office.
Oh,
at
yeah.
PNC. And the state went so far as to make them concrete the drive-throughs.
Yeah, I mean.
So that they couldn't even use the tubes
Yeah.
because you can't drive.
I mean, from a renovation standpoint, as a city planner, I mean, those are kind of nice things to see, that they take an older building and make it look really nice again,
Isn't that what's happening with Big Boy? Eventually?
I heard that.
Well, there was,
Well.
I mean, that'd be
that's
nice to
a
get cleaned
sidebar-
up.
That's a sidebar.
Okay.
That's
But
really
hey.
town. That's
Yeah.
a small town.
so they're going to be competing with Omni for the vacant buildings.
Kind of.
Let's get them all.
There's a lot of site plan reviews going on.
No, are there any other questions for Mr. B?
Very
No, it's a
informative.
good presentation.
No, that was very good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
no,
very
call us
much.
anytime. I mean, if other things come up, let us know. We have plenty of clients that I'm sure would love to show you around too. So, I mean, if that's ever a field trip thing, I don't know, just let us know how we can help. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Field trip.
Party bus.
I'll drive.
Oh, no.
Brock Johnson already said. he was-
Yeah, that's true.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead, yes. Your name, please?
My name is Michael Kramer,
Okay.
and we live in Alpena. And made some meetings down there about this subject. So I've been a patient for 55 years. I use it for sinus and cancer, for a lot of digestive problems. It is without a doubt the most important whole plant medicine man ever found. It's maligned terribly, has been for 40, 70 years. And I think if you guys do the research on what it actually is, you'll be much more fearful of the liquor stores that are within your jurisdiction from an insurance standpoint and from any other liability standpoint. This stuff does not cause problems. It is something that we should all be taking after 55.
People online can't hear you. Sorry, sir.
And, well, hello, everybody online. I'm sorry if I left you out of the beginning of the conversation, but I'm a 55-year user of cannabis, and I just wanted to stress how important it is that we get out from behind the blockade that's been given to us by the federal government under the duress of big pharma, because they're terrified of cannabis. Cannabis is a general purpose medicine, has been used for thousands of years by mankind. It was listed in the first herbal textbook that I ever got, and listed quite extensively for its many uses. So this is not a drug per se. This is actually an herbal medicine that maybe make you a little happy, and God forbid in America that we'd be happy. But as far as the cannabis dispensaries, they are without a doubt the most professional places I've ever gone to get any medicine. I can go in there and it's nothing but the medicine. I go into drugstores and it's everything in the world, and the medicine's back in the corner. And I don't take any of those medicines because they're not nearly as good for me as the cannabis is. And I'll be glad to talk to anybody about the health benefits, because I get the benefits every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike.
Oh, yes, by all means, ma'am.
I'm new to Michigan, came from Ohio, so I know very little about cannabis. A lot I've learned from Michael, but my question is, alcohol and liquor stores have done so much damage to our country. You know, I mean, the accidents, the killing on the road, you know, the list goes on, the medical complications, et cetera. It's a horrible drug. It's a horrible poison. And it just, you know, being just new and learning about all of this, all these requirements for these dispensaries. I mean, broccoli and cannabis are in the same plant phyla. You know, if you ate enough broccoli, you could get some of the benefits. So it's like, it just boggles my mind as a rookie, as a naive person coming in and hearing this discussion, that there is so much caution about a plant that has been growing for eons, that people have used medicinally and for rituals and so on, and that it's considered a bugaboo and all this liability and suspense and so on. I'm puzzled by it. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
Well, and I guess I'll just sit out there. I guess really my question, as I kind of laid out, was, you know, I have some presenters that I think are just going to continuously. I thought this was, thank you very much, Quentin, to see it from an insurance side, because that's always the most entertaining way to start a conversation about cannabis is with insurance. But
that's
well,
what, as a township, you don't have a lot of money, you know, so the last thing you want to do is get sued and be responsible for something, you know.
So I have some more presenters that we talked at the last meeting, people from, but my question to you is, do you want to meet once a month, or do you want to have workshops on a more routine basis? Because it's up to you and your schedule. I look to you and let Chair Hilbert know how you'd like to proceed in terms of having workshops and having, but my concern is gradually, if this conversation continues, I would like to shorten that period of time, because any lapse of time in between meaningful conversations, you lose some direction. So if this is gaining momentum, I guess that would be that point in time of saying, hey, let's do bi-monthly meetings. Let's actually listen to people and start looking at community examples, and then looking at the overlays and saying, okay, if there's 6 licensures possible, what are the interests? And if so, in this licensure, what would be a district? What would be the stipulations that you'd want to see? And that's where Denise will come in, and really guide in that regard of what does it look like in these zones for the 6 different licensures. But I look to you in terms of the timeline.
Have you guys taken a vote? I haven't been here, sorry, but have you taken a vote as to the way you're swaying or thinking?
No,
No.
No.
and
Because at some point.
we've got 2 new
almost
members, and Michelle
Yeah.
wasn't here last time, and
Matt's online.
Matt's online, but so we're just,
I mean, if you wanted to do, I mean, it's a poll.
Well, it's just a poll is what I'm trying to say, like, not necessarily yay or, I don't know, because I took a poll of my friends of their thoughts, because they knew I was coming to this meeting tonight to
Yeah.
talk about this, and it was interesting, most all of them have tried some. The gummies. And I was like, oh, okay, I've got some interesting friends.
well, I think
I mean, what they were saying is just what this gentleman was saying.
a lot of it is the
Things.
Cheech Chong type people is we think are the people that, you know,
Well,
they're
the
driving around in a
reality
van full of smoke. Well, you know,
The
that's,
stereotypes
if
is
you,
what's
if
getting
you
in the
saw,
way.
I went to that Rudge City, and if you saw the people that came in there, it wasn't.
It's a general public.
Yeah.
I've talked about the
Honestly-
vehicles I see at these shops. There is not a jacked up car.
No.
There are beautiful vehicles. I mean, well,
My
Nate's,
people are-
Nate's was probably jacked up. His was probably the worst one. But I mean, you drive by these facilities and you go to these facilities. I encourage everyone that has not been to one to go and just see what it's like. I mean, you can't, when Quentin was speaking regarding like safety protocols and their robbery procedures, I mean, of course, any place can get robbed, but you walk in and you immediately have to give your driver's license and they immediately scan you and you're in a room with a locked door before you can see anything. And I've been to one where you can't even see who's coming out. If you're sitting there, you can't see who's leaving. I mean, there's privacy laws. There's all of that. I have another question, and I don't know if you can speak to this, Quentin, but is there anything within the insurance policies given a salary of what these folks are making? Because I'm looking at it from a jobs perspective too. Are we bringing, if we bring this in, are we bringing good paying jobs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
I mean,
think,
it's not minimum wage. It's not.
no, not at all. I think you're at the lowest, probably maybe 15 an hour, but with benefits. So you're looking at 15 plus an hour, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's
And then we-
it's a competitive industry. So especially if you have more than one shop coming in, I think at one point in time, the biggest challenge the industry had was keeping talent at one provisioning center. Everybody wants to work at them.
Mhm.
So you typically garner the best of the best.
Yep, thank
Yeah.
you, thank you. And, you know, just speaking to Noni's point and adding on to that, you look at the liquor stores, they're paying $7.50 an hour and they don't have protocols, you know, and I haven't been carded in a very, very long time, probably because I don't look old enough to be carded, but these folks, I mean, I think we should do a poll, not just of this group, but of other people and see where it's at. I think that to add to Nathan's point, if we wait for every month, we're gonna miss the boat. And we look at this map. And we look at the coming soon signs as you drive up and down US 23. We're gonna miss the boat and I think we need to jump on it.
Well, I spend $450 a month.
I'm gonna stay right.
I spend $450 a month on the various medicinals that I buy, plus the actual flour that I buy. And so I've got a protocol that I use for the skin cancer that I've got and for the colon problems that I've got. And basically I spend that every month. I'm happy to do it because the hospital would charge me thousands of dollars and I'd be incapacitated. I used to have scars all over my head from where they worked on me. So it's way, way more preferable medicine in the way it treats the patient. I'm happy and I'm being treated for cancer right now. So it is amazing. And if you see the map, if you want to get in on something that's going to revolutionize medicine, and my caregiver at the hospital, who I will not name, she totally told me, she said, my God, you got the lungs of a 20-year-old. She said, don't stop what you're doing. Now, these people are restricted because they're all trained by the drug companies, and the drug companies are funding any anti-cannabis legislation is funded by Big Pharma because they ran the tests on this stuff decades ago, and they tried to extract the components so they could patent them, and you have to use it as a whole plant. And so they're screwed, and I love it. And I'm healthy because of it. I'm 73 years old. I'm in the best shape I've been in my life. And I give a lot of credit to what this has done for me. So please don't miss the boat. I hate to drive to Harrisville all the time.
Well, their billboard says they deliver to Alpena already. Yep. So we got Don Gilman
Has comment?
he
Okay.
wants to, yes.
He has to unmute himself.
Yeah. There.
Can
There
you
you go.
hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the question about wages, since I was involved with the city when we went through the two medicinal dispensary licenses, the state sets all the rules for what somebody has to do to get a state license. Then the city, we set parameters because we allowed 2 medical shops. We had 6 people apply. One of the things on wages we required was that, well, we didn't require it, but when we went through our process, they were given a point for paying 200% over the federal minimum wage, which was, I'm going off memory, $17.92 an hour. And it equated to 34,000 something a year. None of them were really even that low. Some of these jobs started out at $50,000, depending where they were. The bud tenders, they were the ones coming in at $19 or $20 an hour. So as you go through your selection process, once the planning commission has decided what licenses fit where within your zoning, then the township board can set their procedures for what they want to see in order to grant the license. So you have that flexibility.
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
And then I can actually splice in as well, going back to my trip to Rogers City was the discussion at that point in time of the fact that the living wage, have a good evening, Norm, was
Okay, yes.
was more than adequate, but they were actually at that point in time getting ready to start full on Blue Cross Blue Shield policies for all their. So this isn't, I think that's kind of the discussion is we're not in the 1940s and 50s and 60s reefer madness days. This is science showing proof. This is the government opening the door. And this is the federal government having to swallow a bitter pill and decriminalize something that should have never been made a Schedule I. But we all grew up in different timelines. And so our perceptions are our perceptions.
And the state of Michigan voted yes.
Yeah.
By a big majority. Yeah.
By a
You
large.
can't forget. the
That's a
vote.
starting wage, 34,000 something, the starting wage of a teacher. So that's a.
There's people that work at these facilities that make more than I do. Well, there's a lot of people in this world that make more than I do. But
Great, now we gotta hear this.
but I'm just a simple
Don't
public
leave the
servant.
job.
I'm taking an online course in bud tending. So
Well,
catch you guys on the flip
that's a
side.
food science thing, those, the plants, the people that look over those plants, that's a serious job.
FDA.
And they can make quite a bit of money doing that. as a food
And they do, and they
scientist.
do.
Yep.
So those are the things, I mean, this is where the conversation started is, yeah, we can, if we wanted to be very singular in our focus. We could say that, you know, this would be a revenue stream, and it will be. But the more important parts of these topics are, time is of the essence in this market, and zoning it appropriately needs to be a highest priority. Because I can say, in terms of a polling of this commission, I've also polled the Board of Trustees and asked, and I have an inkling that there's a majority vote that would like to see a recommendation come from this commission. But this commission has done a wonderful job, and that's where we're trying to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because I'm not going to just frost everything and say this is the most perfect cake. But where my initial fears and concerns as being the supervisor of this municipality were vastly unwarranted after my field trip, and what I learned in terms of the state regulations to get to that point was, my only question at that point, coming back to this township, was what fits where? Because it's already here. It's in other neighboring townships, but they are in, unfortunately, that's one of the negative sides, is the longer that we wait, the longer unregulated illegal businesses have time to anchor. And that's what some of our outlying townships are dealing with currently, is illegal. This is a strengthening mechanism to have a voice and saying where you want it, how you want it, ABC, on top of what they already have to do. I guess that's what I brought to this commission, is the state, as you so eloquently put it, was voted upon and won by a landslide vote. And now Connecticut just hopped on. What is the total state count of
38, I thought.
30? Yeah, 37, 38.
New York just approved it.
And so who knows? Schumer's been gabbing at the podium a lot lately, trying to push a bill. But it's on everybody's radar. This is happening. It's just, this is an opportunity to actually, until the state changes other parameters, because at some point in time, the market will be super saturated and you won't have that ability, because it's going to be here. It's just going to be here.
Iosco County just announced that they're opening their 5th. And if you drive down 23, there's 4 of them right
Well,
on.
Bay City probably has.
Oh, geez, yeah, you could smell it when you drive down the
Becoming the
street.
capital of
Yeah.
marijuana.
Nathan, when it comes to presenters and getting more information, is there anyone from, the state, or maybe Denise would know, like, any studies that have been done that when you bring in a recreational facility on top of medical and recreational facility, what follows it? What other business growth happens with it?
Yeah, I'm
Has
sure
there
that
been any feasibility done with it?
I
Feasibility for
I
that?
don't know if there's been, I haven't come across a study to that, but that's something I can ask. And as I've always mentioned, any member of this commission, if there's data that you want to see or people that you would like to give presentations, just let me know and I'll arrange it. Because the more information that we can get, the better
The more prepared we're going to be, is
the
the way
better
that I look at it.
decisions will be had.
I'd also like to get a dissenting point as well. Like, what has it done? What are some of the negatives of bringing it into your community? Because I know in my head where I stand, and I know in the 2 meetings that I've talked about, it's all been these positives, this is the revenue and the state regulates it and the municipalities are just additional insureds and things of that nature where we're off the hook. But there's 2 sides to every story. So why don't we have that, so that we have that data to back up where we're at and support?
Well,
Yay or nay?
one of our presenters was going to be law enforcement. And so depending on
Their staffing.
Yeah, depending on that. So yeah, I think what we had, I'd have to go back to my notes. I think I have 5 or 6 people already lined up from varying topics and
But
parts.
are you talking 5 or 6 months out then?
No, and henceforth why I'm saying, would you
I
want
say we
to?
need to do more than once a month. That's my.
All right.
That's, yeah, that was my question. are we as the board interested in continuous discussion? And I assume we are.
I am.
I don't,
Well, I mean,
and so then my second question is, if we are, then should we do this every 2 weeks perhaps? Is that what, kind of what we're,
Well,
or when you can arrange a,
I think what we could do, I could arrange for 2 presentations for the next meeting, and at that,
But maybe narrow down to what you need, what do you really want to know? I don't think we need 8 or 10 people in here talking about it. I think if you like what she was saying,
I could try to find somebody through Lara, the state licensing aspect. And yeah, we should just really hop from one hot topic, insurance.
Well,
the
I mean,
license.
To Lara?
Insurance is important, of course, but
Don't get
I
my
like
heart
the idea
aflutter.
that then you get the law enforcement side of what
Yeah.
issues, and then to your point, maybe at the state reg levels, or I don't know, or you could probably bring in one of these people that own one and just tell you all that.
Well, that's,
You know, you
that's
don't need
gonna
to
be,
Make the state come down here.
our next presenter is gonna be an owner operator. But that being the case, if this is, I mean, I didn't really know, I didn't want to try this, especially in this first opportunity, to try to sandwich together 2 presenters. Because depending on level of questions and thoroughness, it could be an arduous meeting. So I only had scheduled 1 at a time, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't do combinations, but you may get one, as in the next person that could present, that would know everything about the licensing part of it, all the regulatory hoops that he had to go through. That was really my next presenter, was going to be an owner operator. And maybe more than just one if available, because they may have different, things that they faced through that process. Because that, to me, that process, having my eyes open, because the last was MRA, when the Roger City, I always want to say Rocket City. The state said, I want called one Wednesday afternoon and said, I want the video footage from camera 47 between the hours of 9:58 a.m. and 10:07. Needed in an hour. If you don't comply, the state can pull that rug. So that's when that kind of a power. So to Tom's point, I mean, do you want to talk about the potentials of speeding it up after the next meeting, having that presentation, and then Denise as well as our presenter, and then having Denise and this group say, okay, and that way I can say, well, these were the schedule of presenters. Do we want to keep them, or do we want to focus it a different direction? I look to this table. I'm here to basically be your IT guy, and
I don't know when, if we're having cases. I thought we were going to be more busy with.
I thought we were too.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be having some cases,
Yeah.
but I don't really want to wait for the next case to have a conversation. I think that's really the best thing. That's what we learned, especially trying to finalize the 2-year project that you guys worked diligently on in terms of ordinance 142. You got to a point where once a month, it took you 3/4, and it would for me too. It would take 3/4 of the meeting to remember where you ended off at the last meeting. You get down the road, and then it was, so that time apart is as much of a detriment when you're.
Well, the ordinance, from what I'm reading, is boilerplate to a certain extent. It's because it's mandated by the state. A lot of the stuff. So what's added is whatever as a community you want to add. So that's the big discussion that Denise would have.
Well,
You know,
exactly. And she's worked with just about every municipality throughout the state that's in our region.
Right.
So
So she's
when I say we
approaching-
don't have to recreate the wheel,
Right.
she's
So- and they
she's
look
already
to
faced
be
the fight.
Between 20 some pages long, which is and most of it's boilerplate, other than the additions of what we might want to add to it. So,
No.
and like, I notice it's like to accept all 6 of those or not to have certain things you can do, but that's where the discussion lies, I think,
Yeah.
with her.
I wholeheartedly
Yeah.
agree. I
So
just
don't
wanted
think
to,
It's gonna take a huge, like year, it's just gonna be a couple meetings maybe to read through this and then have a big discussion of other things you could add or what other people have done, and like, which would be Denise. These are the things these other people have added to or taken.
Yeah.
So,
So then I have my marching orders for the next meeting. At the next meeting, barring any case, of which a case would set precedence, we will have a presenter, owner, operator, and then the meeting will basically be kind of followed and covered with interaction and equal amount of time to have discussion with Ms. Klein. That will be.
well, I thought you wanted, Michelle wanted to sort of have.
Well, I mean, if we're not gonna have 10 people present once a month, then I think that's fine. But if we can all agree that we can consolidate the time, I just don't want to waste months,
Yeah,
you know?
I'm
Okay.
where you're at is I think we're talking about now going to the September meeting.
Yeah.
And I think we want to speed this thing up.
Yeah.
And that's where I would go. I would say, let's
Yeah.
get
Well-
this thing rolling because we got a lot of work to do. It's like,
So then I guess I will maybe work with the chairman to call a special meeting yet this month, and then at least into September, call 2 meetings. And then at the first meeting in September, we're gonna know if the next one's gonna be enough or we need to go into October.
Great.
Well, okay, I mean, I am gonna miss next meeting, but I could possibly call in.
I would love for you to
So
call.
that's a possibility I could do.
I'll call you.
Okay, you can call me.
23rd.
so we're looking at what, the next meeting in September.
Yeah, well, that's our regular meeting.
I know, but I'm saying, are we going to slip one in?
Well, I
He's
think
gonna
you
try.
should if you're trying to be. in a
If it
hurry.
tries
Yeah. He's gonna
So-
try.
And
So, yeah,
go ahead.
no, I apologize. Mr.
No, what I was going to say too is I want to say and respond to your comment about the negative side of this, because glad to hear your comments tonight so much, if you will, because I sat on the economic chair for the county. And the thing of it is that, yes, it's fantastic. Mr. Meach, it's fantastic. The opportunity that we're talking about and from an economic financial involvement standpoint, fantastic. In my family, I have a lady that's director of clinics in the Upper Peninsula. And there's a lot of the product being grown in the Upper Peninsula, as you're well aware of, I'm sure. So we in our family are the oil side, the medicinal side. I know all those things, and that's fantastic, and the things that you're saying. I also sat on the Parks and Recreation the last 3 years, and this just came to a head again. The last 3 years, the other side of this now is that we've seen the increase of problems and the stench provided by the product you're talking about. And that's just saying what's been told to me. I've smelled it, I've been there, I've seen the people that are affected by this. And then I go back to my younger days and then growing up in northern Michigan, seeing what alcohol has done to families. Then I see what's going on in our parks, our 3 county parks, and the increase. No more alcohol, because alcohol, you gotta carry bottles around, you gotta call and mix it, you got this. Now they're into the marijuana thing, the recreational side of it, and they're using it a lot, and we're seeing problems created by that. We just dealt with a situation like that. So that's kind of the negative side of it we're looking at. How does it affect the community? Now, the other point is it's being hauled in from other sources, both illegal and legal, being brought into the area. And so from an economic standpoint, it's fantastic for us to be able to have some revenue from those distribution and sale of the product. Fantastic. It's good for the area. But there's a negative side to this thing too, that we all have to be, because when we leave here, no matter how we vote, there are folks out there that are going to want to know and talk to our supervisor and are going to talk to us and say, why did you vote this way? Or why did you vote that way? Kind of thing. And the other side, and one more comment I want to make, and then I'll shut up, because I usually
No, this is great. Please.
the other situation is I have a daughter too that's in behavioral health. Okay, and she works in behavioral health, and the situation being that we listen to a lot of the concerns that now in the last 3 years, it's become more and more available to the young people in our high school and even younger than that now. And so the thing of it is that we've got a whole bunch of effects by whatever we decide to do, I think, in the township. And so anyway, that just, I think we need to get, like Nathan says, we need to get people to help us get the full story. I know your medical side, and I know the behavioral psychological side of it because we have family members involved in that situation. So, but we got to move fast. If we're going to do it economically, I think we need to move fast. We need to understand the medical side of the situation. We need to understand the behavioral health, psychological implications that we have. And then just our community, it's a nice place to come to. The campgrounds in Alpena are great because you can smoke a lot of pot and it's available there. So, you know, it's crazy stuff going on, and we've got big decisions to make.
I think that there's only one thing I want to add to this, because quite frankly, I started recreation in the Army. A guy said, "Here, try this." I said, "What the heck is this? I'd never seen it before." But I had a stiff neck at the time. And I tried it just as a lark with him, and the stiff neck went away. So I accidentally went into the medicinal side of it and have used it recreationally, enjoyed it. I don't drink nearly as much as I used to, and I'm Irish. That's saying a lot. I want to point that out, that what happens when cannabis shows up in a neighborhood is that people don't drink as much. They don't do as many opioids. They don't do the hard drugs that are found in their parents' closet. They stick with the pot. Now, I don't believe young people should smoke pot under 18. Their brain's still jelly and they're still trying to figure out if they're what's up, what's down, but it's not going to permanently harm them like the alcohol is that I drank when I was young. It is definitely something that we should concern ourselves with. I raised 6 children and I concern myself with it, but I also know that it's not nearly as harmful as the other things that we've been imbibing in for hundreds of years. And so I just think that the fear that has been built up ever since J. Randolph Hearst got it called marijuana and the wild weed from Mexico, because he had pulp and he wanted to keep for his paper mills, and hemp was a way better fiber. I wear hemp clothing whenever I get it. We need to keep it here if we can. And I'd love to see this micro business thing be developed, because you got people in this area that have been doing it for decades. I probably bought from them for decades and didn't even know it. And we need to let those people make a living. That's the beauty of this, is it's a crop. It's a damn plant like broccoli, like Noni said. And we need to treat it that way more. And you'll find a lot happier population, and donut shops will pop up and drive-through restaurants. The economy is going to go crazy.
And thank you for your comment. That's fantastic. But that's what we have to do. We have to get the full
We
story.
have to get the full story.
Full story, and that's all we're about. As far as I'm
Great. I love the discussion.
Yeah, so Chair, I look to you
Yep.
to get
You won't be around 23rd.
concurrence
The week of the
on.
23rd, I am in. Week after that, I'm back.
Don, or do you just still have your hand up from the last time that you were giving me a high five, or do you have something else you would like to add, sir?
No, my hand was just up, but I'll just throw in mimic some of Charles' comments. I have family members that, before you had dispensaries that were involved in being a medical care provider where they could grow certain amounts of plants. And I just want to throw, because I do the Maple Ridge and Wilson townships, I'm still helping the city, and as you know, helping the township. And I think you'd really be surprised if you went on some of the back roads I have to go on doing these inspections on pole barns and things, the amount of people that are already growing marijuana. I mean, you go through a farm field and you see an enclosure 20 by 30. It's 8-foot fence and you can't see through it, but you can see green. And I know it's not tomatoes. So I think the other upside is everybody's been kind of leaning towards is it's already here. And you either get on board trying to allow it to give you a little bit of control, or because everybody can just grow it in their backyard now. That's legal in this state. You know, I was one of the people that was opposed to it at first, before we had medical, before we had recreational, before they took the votes. They were talking about it. We had meetings at the college with all the zoning and planning commission members from all over up north. And, you know, all the police showed up, all the prosecuting attorneys. Bad, 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 marijuana, bad. That's the end of it. And I was on their side because it wasn't available. But I mean, I think we all know now the cat is out of the bag. And the only way to try to control it is to be able to control it. And you can't control something that's illegal, such as the grows. I saw 2 of them today that I didn't know were there. And I'm sure they're perfectly legal because everybody can grow it. But in the cities moving forward, also looking at the recreational aspects of it too. And matter of fact, Nathan, I think I'm going to have the insurance guy come to one of the council meetings when they have their next workshop and explain the insurance attributes like he did at your meeting. That was a very good idea. But I just wanted to throw that in also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I had a good idea. I appreciate it. It's my birthday. No, so I guess I'll look to you. Do you want Lynn to put together a poll?
Sure.
And email out a poll to the board members in between now and the end of the month? What potentials, when we can find and maximize the most people, as long as,
Oh, for a meeting.
and then I'll make sure that overlays perfectly with Denise's availability, and make sure that our presenter will be here as well.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll have Lynn shoot out a poll as to, I'll put together, is there a day of the week that should be
I don't have my
out?
calendar
a
in front
day.
of me. I'm sorry.
So we'll just start with every day that ends in Y between now
Yeah, there you
and
go.
But I
September.
mean, you're gonna have.
Mondays
enough
work good.
people, you know, for this- you know, if you have a quorum, you don't need.
Well, and there's not gonna be, as it
It's not-
stands right now.
If we have to call in, we have to call in.
Whatever you're doing, I will read it. It's not like if I can't be here.
Yeah.
It's not-
Well, and you can always, because there is, even if you're physically not here, since there's not going to be any votes, you can always participate remotely and your attendance counts. It's just when it comes to
I
voting,
don't
OMA
use
kind of
that.
took away the electronic availability of utilizing the amendment to the OMA. So I'll have her just get that out and we can go from there.
Matt, you have any comments or anything for us?
No, not at this time. I do,
Okay.
what I would like to say that I do support, you know, having these meetings a little more frequently, at least on this subject. So, you know, I'll support that. I think that's a good idea. But,
Okay, great. I thought you had fallen asleep, Matt, but you were right there.
no, I was paying attention the whole time.
So I guess we'll.
Okay, so
there
we-
will be a special meeting, a
Yes.
second workshop this month, to be determined by the greatest amount of participation in the poll that will be sent out tomorrow.
Okay,
So check your email boxes. We'll get right on it.
okay.
And you guys are welcome to come too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We saw the notice in the paper, so we're
Right.
making an announcement about it in the paper. That's how.
Yeah, and if you want, you can probably just write your emails on the sign-in list if you.
Oh, yeah,
want.
we'll do that.
Is there a sign?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right here. Yeah.
Or I can let you guys know too. Yeah,
So you-
I know.
Copy that.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, I have one thing.
Go ahead.
We didn't do an adoption of the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry,
It's
didn't?
on top. Yeah, you had adoption of the minutes.
Oh, okay.
So just somebody.
All right.
I'll move.
Larry moved.
I'll support.
Okay.
Shall support it. All in favor? Aye. All right, opposed? All right. Anything else, Marie?
No.
All right, Anne Marie.
Make a motion.
Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn.
Meeting adjourned at 8:19.
You're, the old owner lives